Hey guys, what's up? It's Corey here. So I'm about to show you an interview that a lot of you have read the article that I wrote, just a little bit about what's going on in downtown Charleston with the mask ordinance, the retaliatory way that the Livability Department is acting, how the city council and the mayor have given that department so much power, how they're unsworn officers. You've heard a lot about it. But I did an interview with the woman who has started these proceedings, the cease and desist, and the FOIA, who is suing the city. And I want you to just kind of hear it in her own words. So what you're about to see is the interview that we did, and after that, you'll see what happened to us when we went to serve the papers. I went there to film as those papers were being served. So enjoy it. Jennifer Trudeau, how are you doing?
I'm okay. How are you this evening?
I'm doing all right. So,
Great.
wow, you have a pretty crazy story. Just to let everybody watching this know, we're in Charleston, South Carolina, and you live in West Ashley, is that right?
I do.
And there's a court, for people who don't know, in Charleston. It's called a livability court. And with all of this, the mask situations that in other towns police are handling or nobody's handling, in Charleston, the livability department, which are usually the people who handle like trash pickup disputes, are the ones who have been given the power to write tickets. Recently, they stopped giving warnings entirely and just began writing tickets. But I just wanted to kind of set that up because for people that first hear about a livability court, they're like, what?
It's confusing. A lot of people have asked me, what is livability? Like it's a joke. Like, yeah.
Yeah. So why don't you just go ahead and start at the beginning. Tell us what was going on and your experience with these livability officers.
So, pardon me, I walked into Target, it was like 11 o'clock in the afternoon. I go to Target maybe once a week, and I'm allowed to be there per their policy. They encourage people to wear masks, but they do have a policy if you have a medical condition that you don't need to wear one.
Right.
So, and I'm there like once a week, and they're very nice to me and my kids. I don't have any issues. And that particular day, I was just going in for literally a frozen pizza and some bananas.
Right.
So anyway, so I'm just sort of shopping and minding my own business and, making small conversation with the tasty cake guy. Our conversation was interrupted when all of a sudden these two men in masks came, and they were like, excuse me, ma'am. And they're much taller than me, and they're just there. And I'm sort of cornered with my back against the bread and the tasty cake rack. And
did they have badges or?
So they had black shirts and they just masks, and they didn't have the same mask. One had like the neck gaiter, type mask.
Yeah.
Which we all know are, actually not
works
good.
As well
but
as
anyway,
not at all.
Any other t-shirt, right?
Yeah.
So, but they did not present identification, and they just wanted to interrupt the conversation. And they told me that they were with Charleston Livability Department, and they were there because they were patrolling the area. They gave me a lot of mouthful of information, and they were patrolling the area because they got complaints for noncompliance. And so, and I looked at that, and I'm like sort of confused, and I'm like, okay, well, I have a medical exemption. So I mean, like, I don't know what else I'm supposed to say, right? Like,
right. And
I have a medical exemption.
And there is a medical exemption.
Right.
And that's one of the biggest problems with these ordinances in general, because having a medical exemption in and of itself, it's illegal to question somebody about medical issues.
Right. And they didn't even seem to care what I had to say. And so he proceeded to just speak to me about, well, they're with code enforcement, and they're there, and CDC regulations and Charleston policy. And, the code says that everybody has to wear a mask all the time. And I'm like, okay, well, I have a medical exemption, and
yeah,
I don't know what to tell you. I'm allowed to be here, and I come here every week. So he asked me what my name was, and I didn't give him my name because I'm like, it's irrelevant. I'm like, I told him I don't really understand why. I'm like, I have an exemption. I have also a letter on my phone from my attorney requesting accommodation for another business, given my medical exemption, so that I can go and get services without a mask. And I told this man this, and he just didn't even care. And he pulls out his ticket book and his little box, the little cover, the unfolded
right.
official thing. And he was like, okay, well, why don't you go ahead and let me see your ID? And I'm like, I'm not going to give you my ID. I'm like, you're not a police officer. I'm like, you're harassing me in front of my kids right now. Like,
right.
I don't understand. Like, I've told you 3 times I have a medical exemption, and I have a letter from my attorney.
They're not sworn officers. So you did try. You said you had a medical exemption 3 times. You offered to show him the letter from your lawyer that you have used. You had that letter written for doctor's appointments, right?
That's right. For an eye doctor. That's right.
Right. So you were reasonable. You were extremely reasonable, it seems.
Right. And I'm non-confrontational, and I'm there with my children who are now starting to get freaked out a little bit, and what's going on. And my daughter, who's, really confused about the situation. And I told him, I'm like, I'm not going to give you my ID. I'm like, you guys aren't cops. I'm like, you can't do this in front of my children. Like, what are you doing right now? And so he proceeded to, spew some stuff about the regulation and the law. And I just started fumbling for my phone, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what to do right now. I'm starting to panic in front of my children, and I'm fighting tears, and my hands are shaking. And so looking around at everybody, looking at me, and I'm just like, I'm going to call my lawyer right now. I don't know what else to do. I'm just going to call my lawyer. And he didn't believe that I had one. And he was like, yeah, right. Call her. We'll see you outside with the cops. In front of my children, he says this to me.
So he threatened you. He threatened to call.
And so now my kids are like, what's going to happen now? And so I just sort of stood there. They walked away. And I just sort of stood there in the bread aisle, in shock, and trying to keep it together, trying not to just totally freak out. And I called, my lawyer, and I'm like, I don't know. I can't believe this just happened. I don't know what to do. So obviously, she's sort of on the phone with me and walked me through the rest of Target. So as I checked out, I was very confused because all of the Target employees were very nice to me, as they usually are. The lady who was checking us, she gave my kids stickers, as they usually do.
Right.
So I was very confused, what just happened to me here? And so as I left the checkout stand, I was just standing in the vestibule area, and I was terrified to go outside because I'm if the cops are out there, now my children and my husband's at home at work, and we have one vehicle, and I'm freaking out, what is going to happen right now? Right. And I'm
fear
I have
tactics.
I'm
you're
my
scared to death.
Just turned 2. I'm oh my gosh. And he's still, oh my gosh. So all of a sudden, the Tasty Cake guy who saw the whole thing came up behind me, and he was like, see, they're not even out here. They're just bullying you. It's they're not even here. So I went outside, and they weren't there.
They had left.
So, right. So anyway,
they knew that they couldn't do anything. They knew that they were intimidating you.
Right.
And that's it. And that they had no jurisdiction, that they knew that they had no reasonable path forward except to leave and leave you alone.
Right.
And they knew that the police wouldn't do anything, yet they still used that to intimidate you in order to make money for the city, to write you a ticket.
And it's really terrible. And the after effects of that is
in a private business. In
a private business that I'm allowed to be there, and the management are very kind to me when I go and accommodating me.
Now, did you talk to them afterward?
So I called the manager of Target, and I explained, what I asked, what just happened here. I come in there each week, and you guys allow me in there. And she was very kind to me on the phone. She's like, yeah, that's the policy. They encourage you to wear masks, but if you can't, then that's okay. You can still shop there.
Right.
And so I was like, I don't understand what just happened to me then. And she said, well, we don't call them. She said, we didn't call them. They just showed up. She said, we don't have any idea who they are. So I'm like, okay, well, where are they still in the store? This and that. And that's when she was like, she put me on hold and she came back and she got the name of one of the officers. The other one wouldn't give it to her. But, you know, I explained to her
the
that
officers that asked you to give them your ID and your name, one of them refused to give the business who they were in, the business that they were in, harassing customers. They refused to even tell that business who they were.
Right. One of them. Right. And I told her, I was like, you know, I think I'm going to call the police because I think that this is, you know, I mean, if it would have been you, you know, I would have called the cops on you. Right. Like,
right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because who are you? You're just a person. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And who does that to a mom? Like, I mean, personally, like, I feel like that is sort of like psychotic, you know, like, yeah. I mean, I'm just buying bananas in Target with my 2 kids, you know? So it's just, I'm not like, you know, drunk driving, like, you know, one of our town council members, you know, but that's another story. So anyway, so she was very nice. She did give me the name of the officer, one of them, and did it, you know, she felt bad. You could tell her tone of voice. They did feel bad, but they didn't know what else to tell me. So after I got home, it was several hours later and calming down, I called a friend of mine whose husband is a cop because I was afraid. I just wanted to run the situation by and say, did I do the right thing? Should I have done something different? You know, because I don't want to get in trouble with the law. I don't get in trouble with the law. I've never been in trouble in my life. I support the police. I do what I'm told by and large. So they told me that I was within my right, that they were in the wrong. Very long conversation.
So a city police officer told you that they were in the wrong, that Livability was in the wrong.
Right, that I have a medical condition. This is not the law. This is a city ordinance. It states well within the ordinance that there are exemptions and what those exemptions are, and that police officers don't enforce this because this is not a criminal matter. This is a civil issue, and they don't have any right to harass me. He can't answer to why they were in a private business, obviously.
They were probably just in there getting lunch.
Right, I was wondering
having a
about
power
that. Like,
trip.
why would you? Right, because
like,
like,
what I think it was.
Who would call on a mom? Who's going to call on a mom? Like,
I don't think anybody called. They wouldn't have gotten. I don't think they would have gotten there in time. I think they just happened to be there, and then they saw you.
Because this was at the Target at the Citadel Mall. What were they doing at the Citadel Mall from downtown, which is where their normal patrol is?
Yeah, probably a trash dispute.
So so the police officer encouraged me to reach out to the city councilman, Harry Griffin, and also to reach out to the supervisors of Livability, Dan Riccio.
Dan Riccio, the founder and current leader for the past what are we at? We're at 19, almost 20 years now of Livability Court, the first one in the nation. And he's run it from beginning to end.
So I get on the phone with them and I'm like, you know, I just want to leave a message for him. And here's my name and number.
Office.
I did. And I don't know the name of the woman. She wouldn't give me her name, but it was some woman who called. And she's like, you know, what's your name and number? Here you go. What's the message? And so I'm telling her, you know, an incident that I had with the Livability officer. And she was like, okay, what was it? And I stupidly went in and told her a little bit about what happened, and I'm inside Target and this is what happened. And then she started to argue with me, and she's like, well, they have every right to ask you, and you will wear a mask, and you do have to answer to them. They are officers, and they have every right to ask for your ID, and they have every right to ticket you. And I'm like, no. I'm like, I'm inside Target, and Target lets me be there. And she was like, it doesn't matter. City law overrides whatever Target has. You know, that's a private business, and city law overrides that. And I'm genuinely confused. And I'm like, when did this become law? When did this become law? And she was like, it's been law. And I'm like, no. But when did it become law? Because I'm confused here because I have a medical exemption, and these men are here and they threatened me with the police in front of my children. And she's like, it's been law since last March. And she keeps arguing with me. And I'm like, no. But then, I mean, like what day? Like I'll look up the law online and see the law. Like, Right? Like,
Because
what
in
am I
reality,
missing?
it's a city
It's an
ordinance.
ordinance. It's not a law. And the cop
Right.
told me that, and Harry Griffin told me that. It's not a
Hmm.
law.
That's right.
That's why law enforcement officers are not enforcing it.
Hmm.
So, anyways, all of a sudden, the phone was interrupted, and this man gets on the phone, and he starts yelling at me. He's like, who is this? Who is this? And he's like, oh, Jennifer Trudeau. He saw my name on the paper. Oh, Jennifer Trudeau. He goes, oh, yeah, we know who you are. He's like, we pulled the footage from the security footage from Target, and we saw what you did, and we know all about you. And he's yelling at me on the phone. I'm not going to yell at you, but he's yelling at me on the phone. We know all about you, and we know who you are, and don't worry, you're going to get your ticket in the mail. And he hung up the phone on me, and I'm like, who are you? Who is this? And he wouldn't answer.
So he didn't tell you his name either. That's three officers three livability employees that refuse to give you your name, their name, city employees.
So I'm standing there and I'm totally flabbergasted. I'm like, okay, I literally just did what I was advised to do by the cops, right?
Right.
So I called back and nobody answered. And I waited several minutes and I called back again and the lady answered. And I was like, who was the man who was just yelling at me on the phone? I don't understand why I'm being screamed at, but I would like to know who was that man. Mm-hmm. And she said, that was Dan Riccio. And she was like, and we know all about you. And she was like, and if you actually do have a medical condition, you can prove it in court when you get your ticket. And she hung up the phone on me again. So I was like, oh, wow. Like,
you were reasonable too. I mean, you took the advice of city police officers. They told you that you were in the right.
Yeah.
You called your lawyer. You talked to your lawyer when it was happening. These men refused to give the business that they were patrolling. At least one of them refused to give their name. The woman who was obviously, I guess, Riccio's secretary refused to give you her name.
Right.
Then Riccio refused to give you his name.
Right. I had to call back and find out from somebody else who he was.
Right. And she was just using that as a threat. Like, that was the manager, so stop calling. That type of thing.
Right.
So that is incredible. So that kind of leads us, and for those, just for everyone that doesn't know, at a certain point, I believe it was in December, the Livability Department decided and announced that they were going to stop giving warnings. So in doing that, they were told that if somebody says they have a medical condition, they still get the ticket and they have to prove it in court, which is obviously against the ADA. It seems like they're ruling through intimidation because they know they actually don't have the authority. And God, this is so dangerous.
And again, like, I'm really flabbergasted, and I'm the kind of person, like, I abide by the law. I used to be a pistol instructor many moons ago, so I can pass all kinds of background checks. Wow. I'm a mom of 2 kids. I don't get any trouble. I was so floored about this, and I'm very patriotic. I support the cops. I support all kinds of social causes. I'm just a normal person for them to come in and treat us like that. And now my children, when we go places, keep asking me, is the man with the mask going to come? And, does he know where we're going, Mom?
And
is
it's so hard
to jail? And
and it's so hard to teach your kids to respect authority when people like this, who don't even have the authority, come and act as if they do and use their power to scare people. And it's like that was their purpose here.
And it's really a scary thing when you have 2 tall men coming and accosting you in a pizza aisle in front of your children who are now clinging to you like what is going on, Mom?
And I go to jail.
I go to Target because Target is safe for me. I'm allowed to be there. I don't go to stores that don't want me there. I don't go to Trader Joe's. I don't go to Costco. Those places don't want me there. They're not going to give me any accommodation. They're not going to be kind to me. That's fine. I'm not here to make waves. I just want to go get my bananas and my frozen pizza. Right. And so I go to Target, and now I am afraid to go to any grocery stores in Charleston. So I
Right.
go to North Charleston. I go to Mount Pleasant. I'm getting my gas there because I don't want to go to gas stations here because I'm just not going. And they're going to lose out, I guess, on the tax revenue there. But whatever. I don't think they care.
They will if we do it right. They will if we do it right. So that brings us to today.
Yeah.
After this happened, your lawyer, you sat down and you decided what your next step was going to be. So tell us about that next step. What happened today?
So we served the town council with a cease and desist letter, letting them know that they have basically overstepped their bounds. They're too big for their britches, as we say where I come from.
Right.
And telling them to stop. They've got to stop the overreach, the unconstitutional enforcement. They are harassing the wrong people. They're going after people with medical exemptions. They're not even following their own ordinances. And then on top of that, we filed a Freedom of Information Act request wanting to know more about who Livability is, where do they get their power, where do they get jurisdiction, who gave that to them, you know, who's the political action committee, what is the involvement there, and all of that. So it's pretty in-depth. Those documents are available on Facebook, and you know,
it's also,
people can read them if they want.
The FOIA, it also has, it's going to have everything about the mask ordinance, all the emails between council members regarding that, the mask ordinance and the enforcement and all of those types of things as well. So that is going to be very exciting. Do you think that they're going to give it to you peacefully and easily?
No, you know, they've been pretty drunk on their own egos for the last year. And it's really unfortunate. And they, as all of the people in Charleston know who have tried to reasonably get in touch with the town council members over the last year regarding all of this, you know, we are not taken seriously. We're openly mocked in the meetings when we have questions and emails. We are cut off early from the phone comments. So they just have not, and they won't meet in person. They only meet virtually, which has caused them to almost be unanswerable to anybody. And so I don't think that, I just
if you don't have to
so.
look anybody in the face, then you do whatever you want. It adds a whole different element when they really don't have to look people in the eye that they're hurting.
So I don't, you know, I think that, you know, I mean, they may try to do something quietly to keep me quiet, and they may try to just make it go away. But, you know, we're basically telling, like, you have to stop with the, like, it's overreach. You have to stop with the enforcement, you know, or, you know, we're going to take you to court, and the law allows us to sue them individually. And so we're going to do that because that's what needs to happen. It just needs to happen. And I didn't ever think that I was going to be the kind of person that was going to be the one, you know, but
I'm sure.
If they're going to accost me in the frozen pizza section in front of my 6-year-old and my 2-year-old, then they're going to go after you in front of your 6-year-old and your 2-year-old.
Right. That's true. So we will be following this with you. We'll be working on it with you and doing everything we can to help. The Livability Department is a symptom of the problem, which is government overreach. And there are, you know, Charleston's not the biggest city, but with this, it's like a mafia arm. It's like an enforcement arm of a mafia. They are, and with their newfound power, they really have just stepped over the line almost as much as any local or city government out there. Really. Yeah. I mean, you have to, I mean, walking down the street, you have to have a mask on anywhere in Charleston.
Outside.
Outside.
Yeah.
Unless you're smoking a cigarette. Smoking a cigarette is healthier than breathing air.
Right.
Without a mask on.
Yeah. So, and it's just scary, you know, and it's, you know, we used to enjoy going downtown, you know, I homeschool my kids. It's super easy to turn a downtown walk into a history lesson. And, you know, now. I can't, for, for now. And, we don't want to do that because, my kids are afraid of the man in the black mask.
Yeah. Oh, and they are everywhere down there. I was downtown today and I had that same feeling. I didn't wear my mask, of course. And, you just had this feeling of like looking over your shoulder. And it's not about whether or not you're going to, even if you're not going to submit to them or anything, you still know that the confrontation is coming. And that's an uncomfortable feeling. It's an uncomfortable feeling to be walking down the street thinking that you could be accosted and harassed and stopped by non-officers who've been arbitrarily given power over your personal body and your medical information. They could just, while you're walking down the street, grab you just like that.
That ball of anxiety that sits on the shoulders of somebody who already has an anxiety disorder is a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
I'm sure.
Just to live your day-to-day life, and, I think that like people have to really wake up. I've had a lot of conversations with people about they don't understand what a big deal is and what rights are we losing and things like that. And I'm like, we have to get a grip here. It's really hard to explain to somebody who doesn't understand, but if you can't go outside without being in fear that you're going to be harassed, right? And they don't have any discretion. They don't have any training. And I asked them this, why would they choose a mom? Why couldn't they just say, ma'am, I'm from Charleston Livability and this is the policy and you don't have a mask? And when I said, oh, I have a medical exemption, they just said, okay, thank you. Have a good day.
That's it. And that's
why
the thing.
Why didn't they do that?
They were doing that and they weren't making enough revenue. So they stopped. So because they're like, oh, people are just saying they have a medical exemption. So nobody has a medical exemption.
But I do. So
it's a travesty.
There you go. Yeah.
Right.
And,
exactly.
And that's the thing, and there is no consideration for people with medical conditions. I don't understand what happened to the accommodation and the consideration for people with medical issues, and I feel like 2019 was such a conversation about people and mental health, and that went all right out the window. And it makes me laugh when I see people parking in handicapped spots almost, because it's like, you guys are not considering such a huge majority of people whose handicaps are unseen. And I'm offering to show my papers and I'm still told, here's your ticket, and threatened with the police. So yeah, it's bad. It's bad.
And these aren't little tickets. They're $500 tickets.
Right.
This is
fantastic.
This is bad. I mean, and they're doing this everywhere. I have some video of tourists who livability officers came up to them and just started berating them, telling them, you're supposed to be wearing a mask, and so we need your ID right now, and just we're writing them a ticket. And the woman said, like, you've got to give us a warning. We just got into town today. We're walking to dinner right now. We just got in town. And they said, we've been giving people warnings for months. And she said, not me. I don't live here. We're tourists. And he said, well, where do you live? And she said, North Carolina. He goes, well, they're doing this there too. She goes, not where I live. And he goes, ma'am, you're getting the ticket. Wrote her the ticket. She said, I will never come back to Charleston. And I don't blame her.
Well, I was really flabbergasted when the Post and Courier reported that in an 11-day span, 141 people got a $100 ticket. And I'm just like, okay, Charleston, I realize that y'all are hard up because y'all have closed so many businesses and there's just not that many tax revenue going on. Okay, but you can't do this to people, and you're doing it on the backs of people who aren't wearing masks. Keep in mind that we're 9 months into this ordeal.
Yeah.
Pretty much everybody's wearing masks, and pretty much the people who aren't wearing masks, there's a reason why, and they need to be left alone now. Choose to wear a mask if you want to wear a mask. Great. That's fine. But for the people who aren't wearing a mask, there's a reason why, and you have to leave them alone.
Well, it's about submission. No, you have
to
submit.
No. They need to
That's what their goal
to the
is,
fact that there are laws out there that protect people like me. Yeah. And there's a law that protects me from being harassed by people who want to do the greater good and do the mind your business. This is
Yeah.
my business. You can wear a mask. I can't. Leave me alone, and leave the rest of us alone as well.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. Thank you so much for joining us, and
Yes.
definitely look forward to following this fight. And I know that everybody who sees this is going to have a lot of fun watching this fight too and joining in, because I mean, well, maybe not a lot of fun, but I have a little bit of fun shaking things up for these people, because they do everything they can to make our lives miserable. It's only fair that we do it back to them. They're public servants, or they're supposed to be, right?
They're supposed to be, and now they got people like me and my poor kids all shook up, and
I know
it's not okay. So,
Yeah.
and I appreciate the support. It's nerve-wracking for me because, I want to have a nice, quiet little life where, we mind our business and just pursue our happiness. Right. And
I'm telling you.
So anyway, I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing as well.
Oh, absolutely. So we'll follow up real soon. You have a Facebook group called...
I do. This is my my 6-year-old.
What's your name?
Her name is Surrey Rose.
Surrey Rose. Nice to meet you. Surrey.
Yeah, Surrey. Yep.
Okay.
Anyway, you don't have to plug her if you don't want to. But anyway.
No, she's so cute. So yeah, Unmasked to Low Country is your Facebook group. We have the FOIA, and we're going to show people where to find that and where to find all the information about the cease and desist and everything. So thank you so much, Jennifer.
Thank you.
We will talk to you real soon.
Very good. Thank you for everything, Corey. Have a great night.
So yeah, when we went to go serve the papers, or when I went along to document it, of course they didn't allow us in the building. There wasn't even a question of whether or not we were going to go in. But we did serve them, and they have been, we have been notified that they received it, and the FOIA request has been officially submitted, and we'll see what happens. I'm sure we're going to get a lot of really good stuff from that. So stay tuned, guys, and share this everywhere. The only way we're ever going to get any of this taken care of is if we actually keep the information going. Keep a free flow of information as much as we possibly can. So we'll catch up with you real soon on this and a couple of other really interesting stories that have to do with Charleston and the public servants thereof. See you soon.